So it's my birthday next week, and I didn't really feel like doing anything, so I figured I'm gonna do something that I wanted to do that I kept putting off. And so now I'm here at Big Bend, and there's actually two Big Bends. I'll probably show you a graphic of that later, but that, I don't know how well you can see that, is where the trail starts, and it's gonna be about a 3-day hike, 2 nights. I might take it a lot slower, just to try to enjoy it more, because apparently it's real strenuous. I don't know if you can see this. This is the change in total elevation for the whole hike. So we're starting at around 2,800 feet, and it goes all the way up to 4,200 feet, which is pretty high. So also I'm gonna try to get some good star footage. I don't know how good it'll look. It's kind of cloudy right now, and then we're supposed to be in a full moon, and from the way it looked by yesterday, the moon really takes away the brightness of the stars. So we'll see. I think I probably didn't pick the best time to have a real dark sky. So that's how it started, but that's not really what happened. Is after that, it's not really what I planned. So obviously the title is a little misleading. It's a little clickbaity because I'm here, right? I didn't die, but the difference between life and death was about 2 seconds. And before I get into that, I think I should tell you the story from point A to point B, and then at the end I'll give you a mythological reference to my experience. I didn't get much footage because I spent most of the time there surviving and not enjoying it. As I'm telling you the story, I'll pepper it here and there with whatever footage I did get. Like I said, there's two Big Bends. There's Big Bend National Park and Big Bend State Park. And there's a difference between them. Right? One's a national park, one's a state park. And I didn't know this until I was researching where to camp. And the main difference between the two is national is more touristy. There's way more paved roads, there's lodging, there's a gas station, there's showers, there's a lot of stuff that's accessible. There's more trails, there's better maintained trails. You could say there's more to do in Big Bend National. Big Bend Ranch State Park is more isolated and more primitive. There's like one ranger station at the entrance, and there's I think another ranger station somewhere within it, but that's it. There's no lodging, real primitive. And so researching it, I was like, okay, that's where I want to go, because the other one kind of sounds like whack. I don't like touristy things, especially when it comes to camping. I settled on Big Bend Ranch State Park. Like I said, it was about a week before my birthday, and it was like an 8-hour drive. The night before I left my house in Houston, I got bad sleep. I only got like 5 hours of sleep, or 4, something like that, because I had to take my mom to the bus station, or pick her up from the bus station. Yeah, pick her up, and it was real early in the morning. And I picked her up and came back. I couldn't go back to sleep. So, bad sleep. This is important because it's going to add up into my almost demise. So, bad sleep the day before I leave. Now I take this 8-hour drive. My initial plan was to get really close to Big Bend Ranch State Park because I left around 10, and I was going to get there around 6, 7 p.m. It'd be too dark to get in there into the camp and find somewhere to camp. So I booked an Airbnb that night. I was driving to an Airbnb. When I got there, there's no signal there, right? So I get there, and the Airbnb, this guy's directions are fucking terrible. I'm talking about just terrible. And so I'm trying to read it, and I'm like, okay, I tried every method possible to try to find this Airbnb, and I couldn't find. I literally spent like an hour trying to find this dude's place, because he lives off the grid with his wife, and they have like this little ranch. I couldn't find it, right? And there's no signal there, so I couldn't call him. So I'm like, all right, well, let's just drive close to the park, find the ranger station, park near there, and I'll just sleep in my car for the night. Now, you know that's not the most comfortable place to sleep. And also, that wasn't my initial plan. So I got another hour, or about another 4 to 5 hours of sleep that night. So we have 2 bad sleep nights in a row now, on top of a really long travel day. So morning comes, I wake up, I go to the ranger station, because you have to check in. You got to pay for your permit to camp, and you tell them exactly where you're going for how many days. That way, in case something happens, they know where you are. And you got to put emergency contact, all that, which is a really good thing to do. So I get there, and I don't really do much research on where to camp, because it was a sort of spur of the moment thing. So I get there and I'm like, hey, I don't know where to camp, where to go. Can you give me a route? And I wanted a pretty difficult route. It's my first time desert camping, and also I read that there's water in Big Bend Ranch State Park, and not Big Bend National, right? So there's water to find. So I wanted a route with water, because I didn't want to pack all of my water going in. Generally, desert camping, people pack their whole water for the whole camp out, which is a lot of water. It gets really heavy, and I don't want to do that. Plan was hike somewhere, get water, right? Keep hiking, get water, keep finding spots with water, right? So I asked them for a route. They give me a really difficult route. I think they gave me the most difficult route. At the time is what I wanted, but my body was not ready for a desert environment. Very different environment. Okay, I get my route, I pay my fee, they know exactly where I'm going. I head to the trailhead, and that's where you saw the intro start. So get to the trailhead, I get all my stuff, and I hike in. Hiking in, the first day, I got lucky. The sky was overcast all day. The sun was being blocked all day. So I wasn't totally exposed to the sun the first day. It's really rocky, pretty steep, strenuous terrain. All right, now here's a video from that. I'm taking a little break, chilling on this rock right here. And you can kind of see it's very rocky. Not sure where I'm gonna camp. It's just all rock and brush. And right now I'm averaging like 1 mile per hour. And if you see these, the trail is marked by these piles of rock, because you really can't tell what's a trail because it all looks like rock. Right when I finished that, I was like, all right, let me get some jerky, and I brought some trail mix that I made. Standing there, and I'm trying to eat this jerky. I'm looking at my stuff that was on the ground, and these wasps start to like get on it, and I'm just like, huh, that's weird. Then a few more come. There's like probably 4 or 5, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot of wasps. And then they try to get on my food, and I'm just like, what the? I'm trying to get away from them. I'm like, oh, what the hell? They're trying to touch me, right? These wasps, they're wasps. They were black and yellow. I'm gonna try to find a picture and post it somewhere around here. So I'm just like, man, maybe I'm near one of their nests. So let me get my shit real quick. Let me get out of here. Quickly, like, shoo them away. And I get all my stuff, put it on, and I'm like, all right, let's get the hell out of here. I start walking really fast. At that moment, I thought they were following me, because I'd like look around, and then there's a black and yellow wasp. I'm like, oh shit. And they kind of like buzz near you. After that video, it opens up, because you kind of saw like a sort of mountaintop. It opens up to like a deep valley. So you go down to this deep valley, and when I got to the bottom, it's all dry riverbed. That trail lasted for a while, the dry riverbed. Walking along the trail, I saw more wasps, right? Same black and yellow ones. So after that, after seeing them consistently, I wasn't near a wasp's nest, and Those wasps weren't following me. These are just how these wasps are here. These wasps are weird. They're like flies, totally harmless. I never got stung by one. I got bit by a fly and stung by a mosquito the whole trip. A fucking fly bit me when I encountered like a billion wasps. These wasps, they just get on you and like explore. I guess their life expectancy isn't very long, so they just get on everything. Every time I take a break, like I'd put my stuff down, get some water, get something to eat. Literally, they would just swarm whatever I'd put down. Even if there wasn't any food in it, they would just get on stuff. You would walk and they'd literally like fly up to your face and you gotta shoo them. Because if you don't shoo them, they'll literally just land on your face. They'll just land and crawl around if you let them. Really weird. They're just curious wasps. Strangest thing ever. But it took me a while to figure that out because, you know, here, wasps getting near you, they're gonna attack you. Over there, that's just normal. Weird. You know, the whole time I'm dealing with these wasps, I had to get pull the little towel out, and every time a wasp would get near me, I'd just like whip it around, shoo it off. Oh, one more thing about the wasp. So I was watching them, right? I put my stuff down, they would literally crawl all over it, and then one of them would like assert dominance, right? One of them would stand there, and if anyone got close, he'd like attack them off. He was like trying to own nothing. I don't get it. Wasps. Yeah, I was moving so slow. The terrain was so brutal. So the first water spot was about 8 miles in. So I ran out of water 40 minutes before I hit the water spot, but I didn't know that there would be a water spot there. That's just what the park ranger told me. So I was getting worried. I was getting really anxious because if this ranger was wrong about the water, I'm gonna be fucked. Like, really, really fucked. Because I'm already severely dehydrated before getting to the water that's supposed to be there. And if it's not there, and I'm already 8 hours of hiking in, that means I'd get there, there's no water, I'd have to hike another 8 hours out, and I didn't know how I would make it. Like, I knew there was no water there. I am so fucked. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. But luckily there was water there. Check this out. So this whole place is dry. Like, it's just rocks and rocks and rocks and rocks. But here you can see there's a lot of trees, and there's some big trees. Pretty big considering everything else is just scrub. And so there's this little path that you go down, and I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a stream down there. So this is the stream, and it starts literally from underground. Up there, totally bone dry. Down here, wasps. These wasps here just go right up to you. I think I just saw a warthog. But yeah, it comes in and it kind of stops like right here. It doesn't really go very far. These wasps literally fly right in your face. Oh yeah, this place is called Ojo de León, and that means eye of the tiger, or eye of the lion. I'm distracted. Yeah, so you saw the water, and when I found it, I was like, oh, finally water, because I was so dehydrated. Now I get there, it's getting dark. I need to find a spot to camp. My feet are destroyed. I brought the wrong shoes for this environment. I brought these mountain boots that are waterproof, right? I should have really brought just normal tennis shoes, because the whole terrain is just completely jagged, and these boots that I have no foot dexterity. Like, your foot steps on something, right? And it just like shifts a lot. Doing that over and over and over really wore my feet out. Because the shoes are waterproof, they're stiffer, right? And thicker than normal. So my foot would shift around a lot in the shoe because of the terrain. My toe would like constantly hit the top of the boot. So by the time I get there, my toenails were like about to fall off. My toenail was like this. So here's the nail bed, right? And here's the nail, right? My toenails look like this. They were uprooted off and almost coming off. The thing that was holding this together, this spot here, was the cuticle. So they're being held together by skin. So my feet are jacked. I don't really want to move anymore. I'm definitely going to sleep somewhere near this water tonight. And this is probably a good time for this next video.
Alright, well, real quick before I leave camp, see pile of rocks. And there's this trail that leads in. And there's these ruins. Apparently some crazy people used to live here. They're called Casa Reza. Right, so there's these two ruins. See here. They're made out of mud. And so I got here so late that it was getting dark. So I decided to camp in the back, which I'm not supposed to camp near it, but I ran out of light. So here's my tent back here.
Okay, so you saw where I camped. Where that was, it was really soft on the ground. It was like really fine sand. So I was like, okay, we set up here. And I was so tired that I thought that I almost fell asleep, right, without eating. Keep in mind, I hadn't eaten most of the day because along the hike, I didn't have enough water to eat, because when you eat, it dehydrates you. So I kind of saved off a lot of my food till I set up camp. You know, legit almost just passed out, like almost went to sleep without eating, but I was like, no, I gotta eat. I burned so many calories today. I really gotta get these calories in. So I spent like an hour eating, and then I ended up sleeping around probably 11 or 12, something like that. That was the end of the first day. Done. I slept till about 11 the next day. So I slept in, which is weird because you're sleeping outside, right? As soon as the sun comes up, it's bright. So like 11, 12 hours. So I woke up late, and the first thing I did was eat breakfast. So I had a big old breakfast, and then at the end of breakfast, I ate 1.5 grams of mushrooms. Now we gotta diverge a little because we gotta talk about mushrooms. So if you've never taken mushrooms, let me give you a general synopsis on it. So I've done it like 1,000 times, and every time I go camping, I definitely do weed. Almost always do either acid or mushrooms, and it's nothing new to me. I've done it. I've done low doses. I've done high doses. I've done it a lot. And nature is honestly the best place to do these types of drugs, because that's almost what they were intended. That's almost the setting they were intended to be taken in. It's always amazing. If you've never done it, it's great. And I've had good trips and I've had bad trips. And the bad trips weren't that bad. It was just, I took too much and I was just kind of like, sensory overload. Yeah, so if you've never taken it, let me kind of give you a rundown on dosage. So like 1 to 2 grams, you're okay, right? You can go out, you can do whatever you want, you can talk to people normally. You're feeling good physically, mentally. You're still pretty acute. You're thinking more deeply about things. You can do whatever you want, and 1 to 2 grams, it's fine. Once you get to like 3 to like 6 grams, you might not want to be around other people. You might kind of want to chill in your house or whatever setting you choose to do it in. You can still talk. You can still interact with things. You're not stuck in a spot. It's pretty good. Everything is, you're deeper in thought now, and it's cool if that's what you planned. Once you get to like 7 to 10, really just 7 plus, you're trying to meet God, right? This is a really high dose. You're probably not gonna move a lot, and you're more than likely gonna be like in this deep meditation for the most part. That's a meet God dose. That's a pretty high dose. I've done that dose too. So I've done everything in between. I've done because I've done it so many times. So I ate 1.5 grams. That's not a lot. But 2 things really affected this trip. One, these were new shrooms that I hadn't tried before. My guess was they were extra potent than I'm accustomed to. 2, keep in mind the past 2 nights I had really bad sleep, right? And then I had a whole day of just being physically exhausted, just wrecked physically. So my body was in a very weak and vulnerable state. So the 1.5 grams ended up, feeling like more. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour for shrooms to kick in. So I eat my breakfast. It's a big breakfast, by the way. I eat a lot, drink a lot of water. I eat 1.5 grams of shrooms right after I eat breakfast, like immediately after. And then I go take a shit. As soon as I finish my shit, the shrooms are kicking in. And so now I'm like, oh shit. Okay. This is happening. It takes 30 minutes to an hour. And if I'm feeling it that soon, literally like 10 minutes after I eat it, I know this is gonna be a really big trip. And it's not what I planned, and it's not what I was expecting, right? So I finished my shit and I'm just like, oh man, okay. And I planned on like doing some yoga and getting some more water, like doing these things first. But by the time I finish these things, the shrooms would have kicked in by now. But that's not happening, right? So now the whole plan is completely changed. So I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to get anxiety because I'm like, how high am I gonna get from this? Because this is not what I planned. I decided to walk for a little, right? To kind of like tone down my anxiety, to give my mind something to focus on. So because my body's wrecked, I don't want to walk. I just kind of wanted to chill, but now my anxiety is really high, so now I've got to walk a little. So I walk a little, and after a while, I'm just like, I don't feel very good. And I'm like, I'm just being a bitch. So I keep walking. After 2 minutes, I'm like, okay, no, I really don't feel good. Let me head back to camp. And also, another thing is, the first day there, the sun was overcast the whole time. This next day, there's no overcast. The sun's out. There's no clouds, right? And in the desert, there's no cover. There's none. There really isn't any shade. And the only reason I got lucky was because of those ruins, so I had shade. But usually there isn't. You might find like the sun angled at a cliff and will give you some shade, or you might find like a huge rock and at the bottom of it that'll give you some shade, but there's no shade, there's no cover. The sun's on everything all of the time. So I go back to the ruins, to my tent, and my tent is still in the shade, by the way. So I go in there and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna head in my tent, I'm gonna do that yoga that I planned, I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna breathe, and try to focus my mind to get rid of some of this anxiety, right? So I'm there, I'm doing yoga in the tent, and after a while, not very long, I'm starting to sweat like a lot. Like I'm just pouring sweat. And now my tent is hotter than outside, right? So I can't stay in my tent anymore. And also now I'm starting to get nausea. I get out of my tent and I'm just like, I can't stay in here. And keep in mind, my anxiety is still it was high before, now it's even higher, right? So it's just steadily climbing because none of this I had planned. The mushrooms are taking me to this level of high that I have no control over and I didn't plan. And now I'm getting nausea. So initially I thought the shrooms were giving me nausea because it felt like I ate 10 grams. And so when you eat a lot of shrooms, it gives you nausea. So I'm like, okay, let's just breathe, don't throw up, because I'm sweating, right? And my mouth is really dry now. So I'm breathing. I'm standing outside. I'm standing there with my hands on my hips and I'm just like breathing in, breathing out, trying to wrest control of this nausea. And then it finally goes away and I'm like, cool, I need to drink some water. So I drink a little bit of water and then the nausea comes back. So that lasted for like 3 hours of having nausea, breathing, trying to gain control of it. It breaks
I drink water, it triggers again. So I'm getting slowly dehydrated because I can't drink enough water to keep me hydrated because I can't drink. So all I could really do was sort of meditate on not throwing up. Because I don't know if you know this, when you're really dehydrated, throwing up is a terrible thing to do. If you throw up and you're dehydrated and you can't get in more water, it can get very bad very quickly for you. So I knew that, and I was very conscious of not letting myself throw up, because if I did, it'd be really bad. For probably the first 30 minutes, I was standing there doing that, but after a while I got tired, so I had to find somewhere to sit. And if you ever gone camping, there's really nowhere comfortable to sit in nature. So I tried sitting on the ground, but I wasn't comfortable. I found like behind the ruin, there was a wall, and then there was like a little rock, a big rock that I could sit on, and I could sit on this rock and lean on this wall. And so I was so messed up, right? I was just like, I just needed somewhere to sit. I'm exhausted, I'm nauseous, I'm jacked up. So I'm just like, oh, this looks good. So I sit down and just lean back, right? And I'm doing the whole meditation thing of don't throw up. Okay, I don't have to throw up. Drink water, don't throw up. Just that over and over again. And at one point, I'm like, man, I've been just suffering. This is like an hour and a half in. I'm like, I need to eat something. I haven't ate anything since breakfast. And I'm sweating a lot. I need to replace these electrolytes, and I'm feeling okay now, right? So I go to my pack and I get some jerky, right? And I can't get much because it'll trigger my nausea. So I get this jerky and I eat it. It's like cardboard. Like, usually when you bite into jerky, like you immediately hydrate it with your mouth, with your spit. None of that. It was just like cardboard. And so I have to get some water and like hydrate it and just swallow it. It was like swallowing pieces of cardboard. I remember thinking, shit, I'm still really dehydrated. But there's nothing I can do because the nausea's still there. So I'm going back into this meditation. So I'm getting higher and higher, right? And so everything, if you've ever been super high on psychedelics, you start to see patterns, fractal patterns that are like breathing in and out. Everything kind of moves. So that's happening. And then another break, I'm just like, I need to eat something. I go to get some chocolate, right? Put chocolate in my mouth, and it was like chalk. I remember it being just like crumbly, like zero hydration. And at that point, this is probably 2.5 hours in, I'm thinking like, shit, I'm still really dehydrated. It's hard to remember exactly when this part of the trip occurred, but I remember sitting there in the meditation, the don't die meditation. Now, like, I'm totally tripping, right? Like, the shrooms have completely saturated. I'm in it. I have my eyes closed and I'm seeing these crazy patterns, these crazy fractal patterns and shapes, interlocking shapes with the rainbow of colors. It's pretty amazing, right? It's a pretty amazing light show. And I'm just sitting there, right? There's no light in my face. It's just in my eyes. These patterns, these crazy patterns that are recurring and repeating and breathing. And so when you're on this stuff, your sense of smell and hearing get enhanced. So loud things get really loud and they can kind of hurt your ears. And you can smell stuff from like a mile away. If you've never been in nature in a remote place, but you probably haven't because you really have to make an effort to go there, the silence is very loud because you've never really experienced true silence. There's always people around, or cars, or planes. There's always some man-made noise around, or like humming of buildings. There's always something going on, audio speaking. So when you cut all that out, you're hearing like there's nothing there. There's always something in the background, and suddenly there's nothing there. So your hearing kind of just replaces that with ringing. The lack of sound is loud. And so that's normal, right? When you're not on anything, it's really loud. But when you're hearing in his hands, like, oh my God, it's just like, it's literally just in your ear from silence, right? So I'm having this crazy light show, this crazy, amazing thing, and my ears are just dee the whole time. And then it started to play music, right? It was almost like the song of nature, right? So it was like dee 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 dee, like this crazy pattern, totally random. It was pretty amazing. So I have this incredible light show, this incredible audio show together, and it would have been awesome if I weren't literally dying as that was happening, or didn't really know I was dying yet. So that was really cool. And also intermixed where there's these bugs that live in the shrubs that kind of like click. I would kind of see it too. So it like, they make like a noise. So it's like dee, and it's like in different bushes, right? It was pretty awesome. Yeah, that part was pretty awesome. So I think that happened first, and then I got the chocolate. And then after the chocolate, keep in mind, this is like 3 hours of just pure suffering. And I think at the end, I stopped sweating, right? I think that's when it got really bad. But I didn't know. I thought this was all, I thought all the nausea was induced by shrooms. I didn't know that this whole time I had heat exhaustion. I figured this out later on my hike back, which I'll talk about after this. The part where I was sitting, at first I didn't look at it because I was just jacked up. I just needed to sit somewhere. During one of the trips, I think it was when I was getting jerky, one of the trips to my tent, I looked at the spot that I was sitting, and like the whole back was just, had spider webs, and I was just like, oh, I can't sit there. But there was nowhere else to sit, and I'm still jacked up, so I was like, nah. That's the most comfortable spot to sit, so I'm just gonna sit there. So I got a towel and I put it on my back to kind of have a barrier between me and all these spider webs. And then this is a spot where I almost died. And you probably can't tell, but see, this is where I was sitting. I had a blanket on my back. And then in this hole was a black widow spider. This is where it gets crazy. This is where I legit almost died, but I didn't think this would happen. So prepare yourselves for some crazy shit. So I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I still have the nausea. I still feel like shit. I'm pretty sure I stopped sweating. I'm just like, oh, I'm so tired. I sit down. I'm sitting down, right, leaning on it, and my legs are out, right? My legs are sticking out. I'm sitting down. What happened? My legs felt like they dropped, right? My legs felt like they kind of like melted into the earth and became part of the earth. That's what it felt like. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, okay, I'm really tired. I'm gonna just kind of lean my head back and close my eyes and just rest my eyes a bit. So I close my eyes. Keep in mind, this whole time I'm in the shade. I've been in the shade the whole time. I close my eyes, and what I see is just bright light. So, you know, when you close your eyes and you look at a light, it has like this pink, orange, red color. I was seeing that, and it was getting brighter. So I'm seeing this light, and it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And as it's getting brighter, I'm feeling better and better and better. And so it wasn't a woman. It wasn't a particular woman, nor was it a human woman, but the energy of this bright light in my eyes was feminine, right? So it was a feminine energy. And she was telling me, not through words, but through feeling, right? She was telling me, hey, everything's gonna be okay. Hey, don't worry. Hey, it's okay. You're gonna be fine. And I'm feeling better and better and better. And it felt amazing. It was just this incredible amount of love just coming through. It literally felt like I was a baby in the arms of a mother. It felt like I was just a little baby, just like totally wrapped around in love. It felt amazing. And the light, you know, was super bright. It was almost as if I closed my eyes and looked directly at the sun. It was that bright. And then in the middle of my skull, I felt almost like a lightning shoot down, like through my face, right? It went like that. And I felt it in my teeth. So when I felt that, and coupled with what I was seeing and feeling, I immediately opened my eyes and I was like, I'm not fucking dying here. Well, I opened my eyes and what I said was, not until I finish my movies or something like that. Because that was death. It was right there. And I opened my eyes and there's these 2 flies just sitting on my chest. Because they knew, they could sense that, hey, this dude's about to die. Let's cash in real quick. So like I immediately shoot him off. And I got this burst of energy. I'm just like, I'm not dying here. I'm not. At this time I was out of water, right? And I'll explain all this craziness at the end of the video with mythological reference. So I was out of water and I'm just like, I need to get water. And keep in mind, I'm all loopy, right? My brain is just like, everything's still moving, sort of. I'm just out of it. Because my body was shutting down, I didn't know it. So I grabbed my Camelback, which is like this water bladder. I go down to the stream. So here's the bladder. And I'd get a cup and I'd put water into it, right? So I was so messed up that I was missing this hole a lot with the water. And so I had to really focus on not missing this opening. So I fill this up, I climb back up to where the ruins are, and I almost faint, right? Because my body is so weak and I'm still severely dehydrated. So I treat my water. It takes 30 minutes for it to treat. So I go back to that spot where I was sitting and I sit down, and the longest 30 minutes of my life, because I knew I was very sleepy, you know, just drowsy, super drowsy. And I knew if I closed my eyes, it's not good. I had to keep my eyes open the whole time. I got a little stick in my hand and I have it sitting on my hip, right? And so anytime one of these wasps or flies get close, I kind of like just shoo it away. So I'm just doing this little movement with my wrist. And just this little thing was so exhausting. Doing this just was so tiring. And every time I'd be like, I could close my eyes a little, I'd hear the wasps and flies and I'd be like, no, don't close your eyes. So after my water was finished, I drank some. This was like 4 o'clock now. Also because I almost died, the drugs kind of like my mind kind of like just cut it out. My mind was like, we're not tripping anymore, we're done. We gotta recover now. So like I was totally fine, not tripping anymore after that. And so I sat there. I couldn't drink much still, but the nausea wasn't as bad. So I would just drink enough here and there. And I haven't eaten all day, right? So then I got a little packet of tuna, the saltiest one I could get. And this one was also an oil, right? So I have fats, carbs, and sodium. And just eating just a little bit and drinking a little bit of water. I ate this like tiny packet of tuna. It's one of those small ones in like 30 minutes. Took me that long to eat it. Yeah, it's just spent the rest of that day just like, first shocked, totally shocked that it was A, that easy to die, and then B, that it almost happened. I did not think that would happen that way on that day. You know, I totally didn't think anything remotely dangerous would happen to me on this trip. So I was pretty shocked and stunned, but my body was very weak. I was exhausted. You know, the rest of the day I just was kind of like standing around. Like I sat for so long, I was tired of sitting, and I know I needed to have some sort of movement. So I was like just like shuffling my feet up and down like this, just barely moving them, just like an old man, just doing this with my water, my tuna, just doing this, eating, just trying to move around, trying to incorporate these calories. Yeah, I listened to music. I'm still not sure how to feel about what happened there. It was definitely my fault. The drugs on top of the environment were just a bad mix. I also underestimated the environment because it wasn't very hot. It was hotter in Houston, right? And so going there, I was like, it's hotter here. But it's the aridness. It's a totally different game. I don't know if I said this earlier. My nasal cavity was it's just bloody the whole time because the air was so dry. I'd had a bunch of nosebleeds randomly. Yeah, it's a different type of heat. Really didn't think it'd be that brutal, but it's pretty brutal. And one thing I could have done differently now thinking back on it, well, also I didn't know I was having heat exhaustion that turned into heat stroke that almost killed me. But thinking back on it, I'm like, man, because I was hot, you know, I was sweating a lot. I was like, I should have just gone down to the little water hole and just got myself wet. That probably would have helped me a lot, which is what I did the next day, you know. So that day, almost died, spent the day recovering, went to sleep. The next day I packed up everything. I ate as much as I could, made sure I was extra hydrated. I drank more water than I wanted to, and I made sure my pack was full when I left. And on the way out, I also got myself totally drenched. Because it's another 8-hour hike, I'm gonna take it extra slow because my feet are still really messed up. My body is even in worse shape than the day I came in because I almost died the previous day. And then also, again, the sun was out and there was no overcast. On the way back to my car, here's where I realized what heat exhaustion feels like. Because I have the GPS thing that tracks you, right? It's pretty accurate. And at one point I got lost, sort of. I got off the trail, and so I was like, I want to keep it safe. I could probably just follow this off trail and get back to where I need to be, but I'm like, let's just get back on the trail. I don't want to risk anything more. I'm done adventuring, right? I just want to go home. I had to walk pretty much up a decently steep hill to get back on the trail. You can see the exact point. I'll highlight it. And so the sun is bearing down on me and I'm walking up, and then I start getting anxiety, I start feeling bad, my heart beating really fast. This is a strenuous hike. So after a while I'm just like, I don't feel good. And so I drop all my stuff and I find the trail and I'm like, okay, cool, here's the trail. And I'm feeling worse. And I'm like, I think the sun's getting to me because I'm starting to get nausea again. And so I find a big old rock, and at the bottom was a little bit of shade at the bottom of the rock. So I had to like jam myself into the bottom of this rock to be completely in the shade. And I was in there for like 30 minutes because as soon as I got in there, like, the nausea came back, and with it the anxiety skyrocketed, right? Because I'm like, oh man, am I gonna have a repeat of yesterday? And I'm like, no, I didn't do any shrooms. There's no reason this should last that long. So it was heat exhaustion. That's what it feels like. You feel like shit and you get really nauseous and you just gotta get out of the sun. So on the return trip, after that moment, I was like, okay, we gotta take a break like every 40 minutes now. Like every 30 to 40 minutes. Even if I feel good, we're taking a break. I had to take it extra slow. It probably took me like, I think it says it on there, like 9.5 hours to get out. So I didn't get to my truck till like 11. By that time, everything was closed. So I was worried, or not worried, but I thought like, dang, gross. I need to take a shower, but nothing's open. I'm probably gonna sleep in my truck again. But luckily I found a really crappy motel, but it was open and it was amazing. And I get into my room and I call everyone like, hey, I almost died, but I'm okay. Just making rounds of, hey, I almost died, but I'm alright. Hey, I almost died, but I'm alright. And that was the end of the third day. The fourth day, I'm done. I'm gonna be an old man, drive around and sightsee, and then go back home. But not all in one trip. I'm gonna probably drive half, stop and sleep somewhere, and then drive the other half the next day. So I drove through Big Bend National. I literally like just drove up to the things, because a lot of things you can drive up to. I got out, I looked at it, I got back in. That's all I did. I was like, I'm done. And then I drove halfway home, stopped at a rest area, and drove halfway the next day. And that was the end of the trip. You know, I went there for vacation. I didn't go there to relax. I didn't go there to be stressed out and almost die. So now I need a vacation from my vacation, which I still haven't had, but probably by the end of the year. By the way, it's December. This happened October 20th, around there. Okay, now that the story's over, I'm gonna talk more in depth about what exactly happened and what I saw. And I'm gonna use some mythological figures to describe it. And you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. One more story before I start the mythology stuff. The wasps there, they were so annoying. Probably like half a mile before I got to my truck on the way out on the third day. It was like a last fuck you from Big Bend Ranch. So I'm walking, right? I'm like, cool, I'm almost at my car, at my truck. And then out of nowhere, this fucking wasp comes by and just bitch slaps me, and I'm just like, oh shit. And then it just keeps flying off. This fucking annoying ass wasps the whole time. I had my little towel the whole time, you know. Every time I'd sit down and do something, I'd just be like this. If I'm eating something, I'm like this, just shooing them off constantly. They're so annoying. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. I'm gonna give you two gods. I'm gonna start with the nice one, and then I'm gonna end with the weird, scary one. But first, before that, let's explain what I saw. What I saw was pure energy with a feminine feel. It's pretty much what that was. It was God. But now I have to define God because it's a word that has been grossly misrepresented across history, and really people aren't quite sure what it is. God is a word that attempts to define the great mystery of life, namely where all life comes from and where all life goes to, right? Like death. Like, where do you go after death? You'll never know until you die. And we've come to know God as a male figure because of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. If you know that prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, it actually started as Our Mother who art in heaven, but was changed over time. The priesthood of the time understood that if they changed the overall dominant figure from a female to a male, that they could get more control over people. So ever since they changed that kind of stuck. But if you compare Abrahamic religions and mythologies to those of other people from different times and places, overall the figure that represents God is a woman. But God is that thing, the great mystery, like it's a thing that can't be described. And so because we're human, we have to try to describe it in terms we can kind of understand, because we're never gonna get it, right? Like you're never gonna know where all life came from, where it started. Never gonna know that. You're never gonna know what's inside of a black hole. You're never gonna know that. So these things that you pretty much are never gonna know are God. So God is a thing that is, you can't even say it's a thing, right? It's beyond all categories. It's beyond sexes. It's beyond words. If you're attempting to describe it, you can't, right? And that's what God means. That thing that is just beyond comprehension. Most mythologies show God as a woman, and for good reason, because as a human, where does all life come from in our realm? All life comes from women, right? Women are the people that give birth to more people. It makes sense that you can't categorize God, but if you really had to, it's definitely a woman, because that's kind of where all people come out from. You know, like, where do all deer come from? Female deer. Where do all bears come from? Female bears. So you're constantly seeing this pattern repeating where all life comes from women. So if all life comes from women, then surely God is a woman. Real simple, real basic. So now I'm going to show you the first God. Okay, so I'm going to show you this picture. Just take a look at it for a while. So what we're looking at is Nut, goddess of the heavens. She's the one that's kind of like doing a yoga pose. She's sprawled out, and on her body are a bunch of stars, right? The bottom is Heb, G-E-B. He's the god of the earth. In the middle is the lord of air, and on the bottom right there is the lord of the abyss, which is the lord of where all things come from. Right. And you see this boat on her body, right? And that is the boat of Re, which is god of the sun. And on the boat, he is carrying souls of people. So this boat starts from the east, which is towards her feet, and goes around her body into the west, just like the sun. And it's not shown here, but Newt actually eats the boat with people. Right, she eats it and then it starts all over again. So it's a pretty simple picture. I'm not gonna explain all the other stuff because one, I don't really know all the other stuff exactly, and it's beyond the scope of what I'm trying to tell you here. If you see her body, it's speckled with stars. She's the goddess of heavens, or heaven. And so if you're an Egyptian and you're looking at the sky, right, you're looking at the body of Newt. Right? Everywhere you look, anywhere that there's sky is Newt. So Newt is like totally surrounding you. And if you see the simple hierarchy of Newt is on top, Newt is way at the top, and she's covering the Lord of Air and the Lord of Earth. She's covering. So if there's a hierarchy here, Newt is at the top. The two male lords are at the bottom. Just from that, you know, she's the top dog. Right, just simply because she's at the top. And so if you extrapolate that into our modern view of the world with this stuff called science that we got now, Newt is actually all of the stars and all of the galaxies and everything when you look up is Newt. So Newt's body is literally the universe in our terms, and technically the Egyptian terms. They just didn't have such an in-depth knowledge of space like we do. Right, and so now this boat with people, it's outside of her body, it's not inside. It's traveling around her body as if her body's a body, or as if her body is water, right? Because boats float on water. And it goes around and she eats it and then it comes back. So you have this cycle of sort of spiritual birth and then death and then rebirth. It just constantly happens. It's sort of representing that all life is a mystery that's behind the universe. Because if it was inside, it would be something visible. But it's not, because it's behind. It's like all this stuff that has this cycle with life is just, it's in the unknown, because it's behind the stars, and you can't get behind the stars. Can't get behind the universe. If you're an Egyptian, Nut is the goddess which gave life to all things that you can see in your realm, right? Because her body is the world, or it supersedes the world. Her body is everything. And so what I saw was not Newt, right? I didn't see her. I just saw this pure light energy that had this feminine notation to it. What this is trying to show you is it's attempting to give you a physical representation of what exactly I saw. It was, technically I saw Newt, right? But I didn't see Newt. I didn't see anything. I just saw pure energy. And also she's, according to the boat, right? She's destroyer of life, and she's the one that gives birth to life. So she does both. She gives birth to you and then eats you, and then does it all over again. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good breakdown. It feels like I did terrible job of explaining it, but I think it's a pretty good breakdown for this one Egyptian goddess. Okay, now we got a Hindu god named Kali. Hinduism has a billion gods, but Kali kind of supersedes them, and this picture will kind of show you that. So the three main gods of Hinduism are Shiva, Brahman, and Vishnu. Shiva is the destroyer, Brahman is the creator, and Vishnu is the preserver. If you look at this picture, Kali is standing on top of Shiva's body. She killed Shiva. In the one arm that she has a head in, that is Brahman's head. In the back is Vishnu looking stunned and horrified. Kali supersedes the three main gods. So she has a sword in one hand, Brahman's head in another hand. You can't tell, I'm gonna try to find a better picture, but you can't tell. One hand is in a boon bestowing posture, which is usually like this, meaning she's giving you a boon being a gift. It's either magical or a truth or something, just giving you something. And then the other hand is like this, which is the do not be afraid posture. Kind of hard not to be afraid of her, what she's done and how she looks. So around her head is a necklace of 72 human skulls. 72 is a mythological number. If you know Islam, they have this whole thing, like if they kill themselves, they get 72 virgins when they go to heaven. 72 is a funny number. I'm really not sure why, but it recurs a lot in mythology. And her kilt is made of arms and legs. Scary lady. She's black as the night. Black doesn't mean, we usually think black and white means bad and good. It actually means, black means unknown and white means known. Or you could say black means a hidden truth and white means a known truth. So anytime you see those two colors, primarily in mythology, that's what that means. So she's a hidden truth or totally unknown. And she has this big long red tongue out that goes to lick up the world. She looks like a horrendous destroyer because she destroys the self-existence of things and unites them to their source, which is her. There's a description of a battle where she's kind of overseeing the battle, and you know, these guys are killing each other, and it says that not one drop of blood was spilled on the ground. She would lick every single drop of blood up before it hit the ground. And her total blackness is she's the mother void, which all things come from and which all things go to. So just like Newt, she is giving birth to the world, but also destroying it and eating it back up. Same thing, two totally different cultures, two totally different time periods, yet they're describing the same character in very creative different ways. Oh, and her do not be afraid posture, because she literally represents death, but she also represents birth, which is the boon, right? So the boon gives you life, the don't be afraid is the death that you're gonna get. And it's don't be afraid because, I mean, death is very scary until it happens, and then it's pretty awesome, at least to my experience. So did I see Kali? No. I saw this, again, feminine energy, and Hinduism has attempted to describe this thing that I saw in a very violent but creative way with Kali. So there's two references of what I saw, and I knew these things already, right? I already knew God was a woman, sort of thing. God was a female. I already knew. I've been studying mythology for a few years now, so I know a bunch of stories. I know all of these things, right? I did not need a fucking demonstration. I already knew these things, but I think knowing these things is what helped me stay alive, because I knew what that was. I knew that was death, because I've done acid and shrooms thousands of times, and I've never had that experience. So I knew, like, this is beautiful. It was beautiful, but it's too dangerous. I remember saying and thinking that, like, it's very beautiful, but it's too dangerous. I don't want to participate anymore in this thing. Oh, another thing is, I don't think I mentioned this earlier. So I only saw this bright light through my eyes, right? It's almost like the sun was in my eyes and I had my eyes closed, and I felt an incredible amount of love, right? Those two things together. First off, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen to date, and I'm pretty sure till I die and see it again, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen and will ever see in this life. And another big one is the love that I felt. It was the most amount of love that I've ever felt. It was more love than I felt from my mom, and I'm certain that if you combine all the mothers of the world and you collect all their love together and then you give it to someone, it still doesn't compare to the amount of love that I felt. So those two things, most beautiful thing I've ever seen and the most amount of love I've ever felt together, and it was kind of like, hey, let's go, come on. And I had to open my eyes and be like, nah, this is not my time yet. But, you know, which was a difficult thing to do, but I kind of knew what was going on. And if you've been keeping track, because I have, last year I almost died in a drunk driver crash. I didn't really get hurt, but, you know, like, if it was a few seconds early or later, like, if the timing was just off a little, I would have gotten really hurt and probably died. And now this year I almost died again. So this is 2 years in a row where I've almost died. The first one, not so bad. This one was way closer. So I'm hoping that this trend does not continue next year. I'm gonna be more careful moving forward. Don't go camping alone, but if you are, be extra careful. Be responsible with your drugs, kids. Yeah, they're cool and all, and they technically can't kill you, but your environment can kill you. Trust me, I know. Really, this trip tested every survival skill I had, and really tested my will to survive. If I didn't have anything going on, like this great desire to do these movies, I probably would have just gave into it. It's really the only thing that entered my head and was like, hey, you shouldn't die because you still gotta do those movies first. And I bet these movies are just gonna suck, right? And then everyone's gonna be like, Tom, those movies are terrible. You should have just died. But yeah, I don't know when I'm gonna do another video and what it's gonna be about, but it should be interesting, whatever it is.